What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we break down the biggest stories in football that everyone's talking about. We're grinding to hit that 1,000 subscriber milestone, and we need your help to get there. So if you enjoy the content, smash that subscribe button, hit the bell so you never miss an upload, and drop a comment letting me know what you think. Now let's get into this absolute madness. So look, I don't even know where to start with this one, because what we witnessed from Shedeur Sanders at his press conference is something I have never seen in my entire life covering football. And I've been doing this for years. I've seen players walk out of press conferences. I've seen players give one-word answers. I've seen players openly antagonize reporters. But what Shedeur did, this is on a completely different level, and the internet is absolutely losing its mind over it. We're talking millions of views across social media. Every sports show is discussing it, and the takes are flying in from every direction. Some people are calling him a genius. Others are saying this is the most immature thing they've ever seen from a professional athlete. And honestly, both sides have legitimate points that we need to unpack. But before we get into what actually happened at this press conference and why it's causing such a massive uproar, we need to understand the context here, because this didn't happen in a vacuum. This is the result of tension that's been building for weeks now between Shedeur Sanders and certain members of the media, specifically one very loud former NFL coach turned analyst. And when I tell you that this beef has been simmering and finally boiled over, I mean it literally exploded in the most bizarre way possible, because Shedeur didn't fire back with words. He didn't go on a rant. He didn't even defend himself verbally. Instead, he showed up to a mandatory press conference and communicated entirely through mimes and hand gestures without saying a single word, not one syllable. And the reporters in that room didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or walk out. It was absolute chaos. Now Rex Ryan, the former Jets and Bills head coach who's now making his money talking on ESPN, has been going after Shedeur Sanders hard over the past couple weeks. And when I say hard, I mean he's been relentless. We're not talking about constructive criticism or the normal analysis you'd expect from someone who's been in the league. Rex has been borderline personal with his attacks on this kid. He went on ESPN and said, quote, "Something's missing with this kid." Those were his exact words. Something's missing with this kid. Now, when you say something like that about a young quarterback who's trying to establish himself in the NFL, that's not analysis anymore. That's a character assassination. You're not questioning his arm strength or his decision making or his footwork. You're saying there's something fundamentally wrong with him as a person or as a competitor. That's a huge statement to make about somebody. But Rex didn't stop there. He kept going. He told Shedeur to, and I quote, "Get your ass in the front row and study." Now think about that for a second. This is a former NFL head coach who's supposed to have inside knowledge of how the league works, and he's publicly telling a third-string quarterback to sit in the front row during meetings and study harder, as if Shedeur isn't already doing that, as if the Browns coaching staff isn't already working with him extensively. Myles Garrett literally came out and said he sees Shedeur in Kevin Stefanski's office at like 6 in the morning working on his game. But Rex Ryan, from his comfortable analyst chair, decided that wasn't good enough. He needed to publicly tell this young man that he's not working hard enough, that something's missing from him as a player and as a person. And then came the kicker. Rex Ryan called Shedeur Sanders an embarrassment. An embarrassment. Now I want you to really think about that word choice for a minute, because words matter, especially when you have a platform as big as ESPN. When you call someone an embarrassment, you're not just criticizing their performance on the field, you're attacking their entire existence in that space. You're saying they shouldn't even be there. You're saying their presence is shameful, and for a young quarterback who fell all the way to the 5th round despite having what scouts called elite arm talent coming out of college, who's been grinding as a third-string guy trying to prove himself, that's a devastating thing to hear from someone who's supposed to be an expert in this field. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the catalyst for all of this, the thing that set Rex Ryan off in the first place, was something Shedeur said to reporters earlier. Shedeur was asked about his development and his confidence in his abilities, and he said, "I know if you see the quarterback play in the league right now, I know I'm capable of doing better than that." Now let me ask you something, is that really such an outrageous statement? The kid is a professional quarterback in the NFL. He's confident in his abilities. He believes he can play at a high level. Isn't that exactly what you want from a quarterback? Don't we constantly hear analysts and coaches talk about how the most important trait for a quarterback is confidence? How they need to have that belief in themselves even when nobody else does. But apparently when Shedeur Sanders expresses that confidence, it crosses some invisible line that Rex Ryan has drawn in his mind. And Rex took that statement personally, like Shedeur had somehow disrespected the entire league by suggesting he could play better than some of the quarterbacks currently starting. Never mind that the Browns are 1-5 with the worst scoring offense in the entire NFL at just 13.7 points per game. Never mind that their starter has been struggling mightily and the offense looks completely dysfunctional. Shedeur can't say he thinks he could do better because that would be showing too much confidence. And apparently confidence from a 5th round pick who hasn't proven anything yet is unacceptable in Rex Ryan's world. So with all that context, all that buildup, all those personal shots that Rex Ryan has been taking at Shedeur Sanders on national television, Shedeur shows up to his next press conference. And this is a mandatory media availability, by the way. It's not like he chose to be there. The NFL and the Browns require players to make themselves available to the media on certain days. It's part of the job. You don't get to just skip it because you're upset or because you don't feel like talking. You have to show up. And Shedeur did show up. He walked into that room, sat down at the podium, looked at all the reporters who were ready with their questions and their recorders and their cameras, and then he proceeded to not say a single word for the entire session. But here's the thing, he didn't just sit there silently and refuse to engage. That would have been one thing. That would have been a typical silent protest that we've seen before from athletes who are upset with the media. No, Shedeur took it to another level entirely. He communicated through miming and pantomiming. Reporters would ask him questions and he would gesture responses. He would use hand signals, facial expressions, body language, everything except actual words. And apparently he was pretty good at it too, because some reporters said they could actually understand what he was trying to convey, even without the verbal communication. It was like watching an elaborate game of charades, except it was a professional athlete at a mandatory NFL press conference. Can you imagine being one of those reporters in that room? You show up expecting to do your job, to ask questions about the upcoming game, or about his development, or about the team's struggles, and instead you get a full mime performance. Some of them probably didn't know how to react. Do you keep asking questions and try to interpret his gestures? Do you pack up and leave? Do you call him out on it right there? And that's exactly what Shedeur wanted. He wanted to expose how absurd the whole situation had become. He was making a statement without making a statement. He was showing up and fulfilling his obligation to be there, but he was doing it on his terms in a way that made everyone uncomfortable and forced them to confront the ridiculousness of the media circus. Now, the reactions to this have been all over the place, and they're fascinating to analyze because they tell us a lot about different perspectives on professional sports and media relations. On one side, you have people who think this was absolutely genius. They're pointing out that Shedeur technically fulfilled his media obligation. He showed up, he was present, he engaged with the reporters in his own way, he didn't break any rules, and more importantly, he made his point crystal clear without giving Rex Ryan or anyone else any more ammunition to use against him. What are they going to do? Criticize him for the specific words he used when he didn't use any words? They can criticize the act itself, but they can't take quotes out of context or twist what he said because he didn't say anything. From a strategic standpoint, if you're trying to avoid giving your critics more material while still making a statement about how you feel about their treatment of you, this is actually pretty brilliant. There's also the argument that this shows incredible restraint from Shedeur. Think about it. He's a young player getting absolutely torched on national television by a former NFL head coach who's calling him an embarrassment and saying something's missing with him. That's deeply personal. That goes beyond normal football criticism. And his response is to show up and do a mime act. He didn't go on social media and start a Twitter war. He didn't call into a rival network and fire back. He didn't leak anything to reporters or try to plant stories about Rex Ryan. He just showed up and silently made his point through pantomime. There's something to be said for that level of composure, especially for someone so young in such a high-pressure environment. And then there's the cultural aspect of this that's really interesting. Younger athletes, especially from this generation, have a very different relationship with media than previous generations did. They grew up with social media. They know how sound bites get taken out of context. They've seen how the media can build you up one week and tear you down the next. They understand that the traditional media structure isn't necessarily there to help them or support them. It's there to generate content and clicks and views. So when someone like Shedeur does something like this, there's a segment of younger fans who absolutely love it because they see it as him beating the media at their own game. He's creating content, he's going viral, everyone's talking about him, but he's doing it on his terms without giving them what they traditionally want. But then on the flip side, you have people who are absolutely furious about what Shedeur did. Media analyst Matt Fontana didn't hold back at all. He called Sanders' mime act completely unprofessional, immature, and childish. Those were his exact words. And look, I can understand where he's coming from even if I don't entirely agree with it. In traditional professional sports culture, you show respect to the media. You answer questions even when you don't want to. You take the criticism on the chin and you respond with maturity and grace. You let your play on the field do the talking. That's been the expected standard for decades. And when someone like Shedeur comes along and completely flips that script, it makes people uncomfortable because it challenges the established order of how things are supposed to work. Fontana's point is essentially that Shedeur is a third-string quarterback who hasn't done anything in the NFL yet. He hasn't earned the right to make a mockery of press conferences. He hasn't proven he deserves to be in the league, much less to be acting like this with the media. In this view, you need to establish yourself first, you need to show what you can do on the field, and then maybe once you're a star, you can get away with being difficult with the media. But as a guy who fell to the 5th round and is currently 3rd on the depth chart on a 1-5 team, this kind of behavior is completely out of line and shows a fundamental lack of respect for the process and the people whose job it is to cover the team. And then you had Bruce Arians jump in with a completely different angle that honestly might be the most interesting take of all. Arians is a Super Bowl champion head coach who knows exactly how NFL organizations work and how they should function. And his question was, why is the Browns organization even allowing their 3rd-string quarterback to do media availability in the first place? That's a really good question, actually. Think about how unusual that is. 3rd-string quarterbacks typically don't do press conferences. They're not regularly available to the media. They're not being asked to go up there and answer questions week after week. So why is Cleveland putting Shedeur in this position? Arians is basically suggesting that the Browns organization bears some responsibility here for setting Shedeur up in a situation that he clearly wasn't ready to handle properly. If you're going to put a young, unproven player in front of the media on a regular basis, you better make sure he's properly coached on how to handle it. You better make sure he understands the do's and don'ts. And if he's getting roasted on national television by someone like Rex Ryan, maybe you step in as an organization and provide some guidance or support. But apparently none of that happened, and now you have this circus playing out that makes everyone look bad. The player looks immature, the media looks foolish trying to interpret mime gestures, and the organization looks dysfunctional for allowing it to get to this point. Now let's talk about Rex Ryan for a minute, because his role in all of this can't be ignored. Rex has made a career out of being loud and controversial. That's his brand. That's what ESPN pays him for. They don't want measured, thoughtful analysis from Rex Ryan. They want hot takes and viral moments and sound bites that get shared across social media. And to his credit, Rex has been very good at providing exactly that throughout his media career. But there's a line between being entertainingly provocative and being unnecessarily cruel to young players who are trying to establish themselves. And a lot of people think Rex crossed that line with his comments about Shedeur. When you're someone with Rex Ryan's platform and experience, you have a responsibility to be fair in your criticism. You can question someone's technique or their decision-making or their performance without attacking their character or saying something's missing with them as a person. And the fact that Rex went that far, that he made it personal, is why so many people are defending Shedeur's response, even if they don't love the specific way he did it. Because at some point, when someone is taking cheap shots at you on national television and attacking you personally rather than professionally, you have to respond somehow, and maybe doing a mime routine is better than saying something you'll regret or getting into a war of words that just escalates the situation further. There's also an interesting power dynamic at play here that's worth examining. Rex Ryan is a former head coach with name recognition and a big platform. Shedeur Sanders is a 5th-round pick with a famous last name, but 0 NFL accomplishments. In a traditional sense, Rex has all the power in this relationship. He can say whatever he wants about Shedeur and face 0 consequences. He's not going to lose his job at ESPN for criticizing a 3rd-string quarterback, but Shedeur can't fire back in traditional ways without potentially facing repercussions. If he goes on a rant about Rex Ryan, he gets labeled as entitled or soft or unable to handle criticism. If he says the wrong thing, it becomes bulletin board material that follows him around. So by doing what he did, by responding through mime and making it absurd and theatrical, Shedeur actually leveled the playing field in a weird way. He took back some of that power by controlling the narrative on his own terms. And speaking of narrative control, let's talk about what this has done for Shedeur's profile. Love him him or hate him, everyone is talking about him now. His name is trending on social media. Every major sports show has discussed this incident. Articles are being written, videos are being made. This moment has given him more attention and publicity than anything he could have done on the field as a third-string quarterback. Is that good attention? That's debatable. But in today's world where attention equals currency and relevance equals opportunity, Shedeur has absolutely raised his profile through this stunt. Whether that ultimately helps or hurts his career remains to be seen, but he's definitely not going to fade into obscurity as just another late-round pick who never panned out. Now I want to address something that I think is really important in all of this, and that's the mental health aspect. We don't talk about this enough when it comes to professional athletes and their relationship with media criticism. These are human beings who have feelings and emotions and insecurities just like everyone else. And when someone like Rex Ryan goes on national television and says something's missing with you, that you're an embarrassment, that has an impact, that gets into your head, that affects your confidence and your mental state. And for a young player who's already dealing with the pressure of trying to make it in the NFL, who's already dealing with the disappointment of falling to the 5th round when he thought he'd go higher, that kind of public criticism can be devastating. So when we're sitting here debating whether Shedeur's response was professional or appropriate, maybe we should also be asking whether Rex Ryan's initial comments were professional or appropriate. Maybe we should be examining the media culture that creates situations where former players and coaches are incentivized to be as harsh and controversial as possible, because that's what generates clicks and views. Maybe we should be thinking about the responsibility that comes with having a platform, and whether we're creating an environment where young athletes feel like they have to resort to mime performances just to protect their mental health from constant personal attacks. Because here's the thing, and this is what a lot of people are missing in this whole debate. Shedeur's mime performance wasn't just about Rex Ryan. It was about the entire media ecosystem and how it treats young players. It was about how every word you say can be twisted and used against you. It was about how you're expected to just sit there and take criticism with a smile on your face, even when that criticism crosses the line into personal attacks. It was about how the media wants access to players for content, but doesn't necessarily want to treat those players with basic human dignity and respect. The mime act was absurd and over the top, yes, but it was also a statement about how absurd and over the top the whole situation had become. And now we're left with this question of what happens next. Does Shedeur continue this approach at future press conferences? Does he eventually break his silence and address this directly? Does Rex Ryan double down on his criticism, or does he back off? Does the Browns organization step in and provide some guidance here? And most importantly, does any of this actually matter when it comes to what happens on the football field? Because at the end of the day, Shedeur Sanders is going to be judged by what he does when he gets his opportunity to play, not by whether he spoke or mimed at a press conference. But in a way, that's exactly the point Shedeur was making with his performance. The media stuff, the press conferences, the back and forth with analysts, none of that actually matters when it comes to playing football. It's all theater. It's all content generation. It's all part of the machine that exists around the sport but isn't actually the sport itself. So why should he take it seriously? Why should he give them the sound bites they want when they're not going to treat him fairly anyway? Why not just show up, fulfill his obligation, and do it in a way that exposes the whole thing as the circus that it is? Look, I don't know if what Shedeur did was right or wrong. I genuinely don't. On one hand, I think there's something to be said for taking the high road, for being professional even when others aren't, for proving yourself through your actions rather than through stunts. On the other hand, I completely understand his frustration, and I think there's something powerful about refusing to play by rules that are rigged against you anyway. What I do know is that this is one of the most fascinating stories we've seen this season, and it raises so many questions about athlete-media relations, about generational differences in how people approach these situations, and about what we expect from young players who are under enormous pressure. The reality is that sports media has changed dramatically over the past decade. It's not just about reporting facts anymore. It's about hot takes and viral moments and generating engagement at any cost. And players, especially younger players, are adapting to that reality in ways that previous generations never had to. Some of them are embracing it and using it to build their brands. Others are pushing back against it in creative ways. And what Shedeur did falls somewhere in between. He created a viral moment, but he did it as a form of protest rather than promotion. What we're witnessing is a fundamental shift in the power dynamic between athletes and media. For decades, the media held all the cards. They controlled the narrative. They decided which stories got told and how they got told. Athletes needed them more than they needed athletes. But with social media and direct access to fans, that's changing. Athletes don't need traditional media the way they used to. They can build their own brands and tell their own stories without going through traditional channels. And that scares a lot of people in the media industry because it threatens their relevance and their business model. So when someone like Shedeur does what he did, it's not just a young player being immature. It's part of a larger evolution in how sports media works and who has control over the narrative. And that's why this story matters beyond just being a weird thing that happened at a press conference. It's a glimpse into the future of athlete-media relations and how that relationship is going to continue evolving as younger athletes come into the league with different expectations and different approaches to dealing with the media circus. Whether you think Shedeur was a genius or a fool, whether you're Team Rex Ryan or Team Shedeur Sanders, you can't deny that this moment is going to be remembered and discussed for a long time. And honestly, that might be the biggest win of all for Shedeur. Mission accomplished.